Every human being in the entire world has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I'm going to tell you 4 things that are in your way from getting that. So first, I want to start with the fundamentals. If it is a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, rights cannot be taxed. And so you don't think I'm crazy, the Supreme Court of the United States agrees. Rights cannot be converted into privileges and taxed. What does that mean? That means that if something is a right, the government cannot interfere with your rights. We can get into the 9th Amendment, which says even though there's not a right to own property listed out in the United States Constitution, it is still a right because that right is necessary for your right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So, when I say it is a right for basic life, let's start here. For basic life, it is necessary to have food and shelter. That means if you have a right to life, you have a right to food and shelter. Now, that doesn't mean that somebody needs to provide that for you. What it means is that if you acquire it and protect it on your own and you have it, nobody has the right to take it away from you or to interfere with you from getting it. That is what a right means. So it is a right for you to have food and shelter. These rights cannot be taxed, and the government cannot interfere with you exercising these rights. But they do. And I'm going to tell you these 4 ways. There are probably a lot more ways than 4, but these 4 are the most important. Number 1, property tax. Now, I know a lot of people are like, hey, but we need taxes to pay for government. Fine, tax something else. I'm not here to debate that today. What I'm here to say is property tax interferes with your right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. If you own a home, if you've owned that home your entire life, all it takes is missing 1 month of payments to your property tax and the government can make you homeless. You have owned that home without debt for your entire life. Maybe it was your parents' home and you grew up in it. They can take it away that fast. If you owe $100 in property tax, they can take $100,000 or more worth of property away from you and make you homeless, leaving you with nothing. This is a crime. This is interfering with your right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. We need to eliminate the property tax. Number 2, the inheritance tax. And I know a lot of people are saying, oh, but inheritance tax only applies to the wealthy. And they shouldn't be able to, nobody should get, I had to work for my whole life. Why should somebody else get to be born into this system of wealth where they don't have to pay for anything? This is an extremely complex issue, but I want to point out a few things. Those people who are not allowed to inherit wealth are being forced into the workforce. That means they're competing with you for jobs, which means your employer gets the pick of the litter. They have more options to choose from. They have more people who are desperate for work, which means they can pay lower wages. Get rid of the inheritance tax, you'll see higher wages. Not immediately, but you will see them. Something else to consider. A lot of people are renting their homes right now. A lot of people are renting homes whose parents owned property. But because of the inheritance taxes, they weren't allowed to receive that entire property. Their grandparents might have owned property. Their great-grandparents might have owned property. And through this generational theft, they have taken property away from us. It now belongs to the government and to the banks. We need to eliminate the inheritance tax because this is interfering with our fundamental right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is interfering with our right to have food and shelter. This is not just about the wealthy. Something else to consider is the farms. I know a lot of people don't live on farms, but if you hate those big consolidated agri corporations that have taken over the small farms and now control all of your food, They did that in part through inheritance taxes. Farmers who wanted to leave their farms to the next generation, to their kids, they couldn't because of the inheritance taxes. So now they have to split their property in half, or they have to borrow a ton of money from the banks. Ultimately, they end up getting smaller and smaller farms. The rest of the farms go to the big consolidated agri-corporations or to the banks, who then sell them to the big consolidated agri-corporations, and we have lost control of our own food supply to giant corporations through inheritance tax. We have to get rid of all inheritance taxes. Yes, there are going to be some people who have it easy in life, but guess what? If you take that away from them, you're also making your own life more difficult. Don't worry about other people who have more than you. Worry about what's going to happen to you if you try to do something about it. Number 3, the FHA. Now, a lot of people think the FHA is there to make it easier to buy a home. It's not. It's there to make it easier to get into debt. Now, I've been spending a lot of time in Mexico, and I've been looking at how they handle property down here. Now, this is interesting. They don't have an FHA down in Mexico, and because of that, when people want to buy homes, they usually do it in cash. Now, that sounds expensive, especially for a poorer country like Mexico, but they have an 80% home ownership rate in Mexico. In the United States, they say we've got something like 80% home ownership, but the reality is 80 to 88% of American families are in debt up to $60,000 or more on average. So that means nobody really owns anything in the United States. The wealthiest country in the world, supposedly, nobody owns their homes. You have a piece of property with your name on it, but as soon as you lose your job and as soon as you stop making payments to the bank, it's gone. They have not put us all into property ownership positions. They have put us all into debt positions. Here's some other interesting information. Before the FHA was created, in 1933, I believe, the same year that they tried to convince every American to turn in their gold for this paper fiat currency we have that's worthless. Before that, the average house cost, and I know inflation, it was very inexpensive. The average cost was 2 years' salary. What does a house cost today? 4 to 8 years' salary. That change happened almost immediately after the FHA was created. Why? Because of easy money. See, if people were able to buy their homes before the FHA, if most people were able to buy their homes with just a couple years' salary, why would the banks need to lend so much money through the FHA? Well, if they could inflate the prices of the housing itself, then people would need to borrow more money. And that's the fundamental difference. If you look at Mexico versus the United States, the cost of property in Mexico is much lower. Why? Because people don't have banks to back them up. People don't have the government to back them up in accumulating a ridiculous amount of money to spend just to have a roof over their head. That's number 3. Number 4, the income tax. Now, I know a lot of people will say, but the income tax, it pays for the government. We need it. We need to tax the rich. We need to tax the 1%. Here's the thing with the property tax. With the income tax. The income tax applies to everybody. I don't care how much you're making, you're getting taxed on your income. This is the problem with that. You're working your ass off to get this money. And where does it go? It goes to the government. You have all this debt because of the government. You don't own property because of the government. And as hard as you work to try to earn money and save money to pay off your debts and acquire property so that you don't have to throw your money away on rent, the government takes. They take. The income tax is preventing you from doing all of that. The income tax is taxing the very money that you spend putting a roof over your head. They tax the very money that you spend on food and shelter. The two basic necessities of life are being taxed. Not because they're taxing the sale of the food, but because they're taxing the money that you use to buy the food. They're taxing the land that they use to grow the food. They are taxing your fundamental right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness through the income tax. We have to get rid of the income tax. So these are 4 things that we absolutely must get rid of in order to have a more free and prosperous country. And I don't just mean for the 1%. I mean for the 99%. This is for everybody. If you don't make a whole lot of money, you're probably throwing all your money away on rent because you don't own property. But you should own property. And the reason you can't, the reason it's been made extremely difficult is because of the 4 things that I just mentioned. The property tax, the inheritance tax, the FHA, and the income tax. Keep that in mind. We have to get rid of these taxes. These taxes are directly responsible for the struggle of every American. Taxation is theft, guys. I'll catch you later.